Well, I'm Rev Bonnie, the community spiritual leader here at the center, and this month we're focused on mental equivalence, the mental equivalent and me. And last week, Peggy pointed out that me stands for mental equivalent. We are that mental equivalent. And so I thought that was a great insight. The first time I spoke, I shared with you that Emmett Fox is the person that sort of brought this term into use in our community. And he felt like there were two poles that upheld that mental equivalent, that demonstrated, as Teresa was reading, that made that demonstration in our life or manifest something for us in our life. Those two poles are clarity of thought and feeling or interest. And so a couple of weeks ago, I focused on clarity of thought and how we get to that place of being clear in our thinking. So today I'm going to focus on the second pole, that of interest. And one of the things I know is that interest was really a fun word to play with because you can use it in a lot of different ways. When someone wants to increase their fortune, what do? They take their money and they put it somewhere that pays high interest. And the greater the interest, the greater the return. And the same thing happens when we think about having interest in or paying interest to that clarity of thought that we have in our mind. The greater the interest we have, the greater the return. And then we can also use the word interest as what we're interested in, what we're paying attention to, what our interests are. And so I thought I would use Emmett Fox's own words to share with you how he's talking about the use of these two terms. Think of the conditions that you want to produce. If you want to be healthy, happy, prosperous, doing a constructive work, having a continuous understanding of God, you do not picture it necessarily, but you think it, feel it, and get interested in it. What we call feeling in connection with thought is really interest. Feeling is not excitement. Did you ever hear of anything coming from excitement except apoplexy? True feeling in thought is interest. Now, those were his words. You build a mental equivalent for what you want by getting interested in it. That is the way you create feeling. If you want health, you get interested in health. If you want a right place, you get interested in service, doing something that is really serving your fellow man. The reason people do not get ahead in business is that they try to think up schemes to get their fellow man's money instead of thinking up opportunities for service. The successful person gets interested in what he or she wants to do and gets rid of the things he or she is not interested in. So that's Emmett Fox and how he explains how this thing works. So I thought it was interesting that he said it's not just about getting excited, because I think I'd been picturing the mental equivalent as having that picture and then just having a lot of really excited feelings about it. So the more I thought about it, I thought, well, let's just consider. Suppose you have a friend that you haven't seen for a long time, and you're really excited about having them visit. And so while you're getting ready for them to come, you're picturing, you have this great vision of how it's going to be. You're going to connect with this person, and while you're cleaning the house and changing the sheets on the bed and buying those special snacks that you like to have while you're talking, you've got this great mental picture of how this visit is going to go. And then the doorbell rings, and you're really excited, and you open the door, and then you walk in the other room, and you ignore the person. Are you going to have that connection? Is all of that exciting stuff that you envisioned actually going to happen? How much good is your positive thoughts and all of that excitement going to do you if you ignore what's on the other side of that door or who walks through it? So I started to get that interest and how we pay interest to what it is we're creating is really important. It's that second pillar. So how do we show that we're interested in something? Emmett Fox uses the example of a business. How do we know someone's really interested in their work, whatever it is, their calling? We know when someone's really interested, they're paying attention, they're listening, and they're usually getting creative and taking action on innovative thoughts. There's that sense of innovation going on. Creativity moving into innovation, moving into action. And I think if we have a person visit us, we show interest, again, by listening, by paying attention, by spending time with them. And so if we apply that to our creative thought, to that vision that we have of what it is we want, then the second pillar of getting interested in it is paying attention to it, spending time with that. And I think it's also getting that place where we take initiative and start to take action. Sometimes you've heard it said, treat and move your feet. It's not about just sitting there waiting for it to go poof. So here's a little embarrassing bit of confession that I discovered as I was putting this talk together. For many years, I've wanted to weigh something different than I do. And I have had a very clear picture of what I want to weigh and what I would look like weighing that, because I was much thinner in my early 20s. Actually, all the way up until I hit 30. And I've had a real clear picture of what it would be like to go buy the new clothes and how it would feel again in my body. So I've had that first pillar very clearly. I've done treatments. I've gotten real excited about the idea. So I thought to myself, well, how much interest do I really have in this? How much interest, when I asked myself real honestly, do I have in doing what I know it takes? Well, I had some interest in the nutritional part, so I fixed that. But when it came to the exercise part, which I know it's not going to be poof, remember Ernest Holmes said it's done in congruence with natural law. So the natural law requires me to then get a little interested in exercise, which, to be quite honest, I don't have any interest in. And so I realized that second pillar is missing. And so I have to think now about how I might gain some interest in something that will get the body moving to do in congruence with the natural law what I want it to do, what I've said I wanted it to do for years. So it was interesting for me to ask myself that question and to really get honest with myself and realize, okay, I don't have a whole lot of interest in that. I have a lot of interest in a lot of other things. A lot of other things get my time and attention. A lot of other things get that energy that I would say is interest, and not the other. The other thing that Emmett Fox said in his write-up is that sometimes we can state our truth. You know, I am a child of God, I am made perfect in the image and likeness of God, all of these truths, but we don't have a lot of feeling behind them. Sometimes we just say them. But when we start complaining about what's going on in our body or what's happening in our life, the feeling starts to rush in. So what's happening then is we're supporting that, which is where the feeling goes. And so again, I realized that I spent a lot of internal energy and a lot of feeling with the complaining about what I look like, as opposed to putting that energy and interest into getting there by doing what I know it takes. So this was a real lesson for me as I sat there and looked at these two pillars and how they were working in my life, just in one area of my life. And Ernest Holmes also talks about the importance of feeling and the feeling behind the words. This is from the textbook that he wrote. No class of people on earth believes more in prayer than we do. Our whole theory is based not only on the belief in spirit, but in the availability of it, its immediate response. We even go so far as to say in everyday language, pray right and God cannot help responding. This is as far as anyone can go in faith. There's no confusion in the approach to reality with a capital R. It should be calm and dispassionate, but filled with feeling, because feeling and emotion are creative. We should combine the letter and the spirit of the law. So again, the importance of having the clear picture, the thoughts, and the feeling, and not just that excitement of, oh yeah, this is going to be great, but the feeling that comes along with really having interest in what it is that we're creating. So, how much interest does your good get? How much interest does what you're seeing for yourself and what you're wanting to create get from you? And what kind of interest would give you the greatest returns? What would that look like? So as we focus again this year all of the centers are focusing on this global heart vision, the idea of a world that works for everyone. And as we think about it in terms of that focus, a world that works for everyone, how much interest do you have in that? And how much can you visualize it? One of the things that I saw as a place that I could start the practice, and where I think we could all enhance our practice that we already have, is in seeing God expressing in everyone. Everyone. If we could do that on a consistent basis, I think that would give us 100% return. Imagine a world where everyone sees everyone as God expressing, and thus as one, as a connected whole. We've already seen what happens when fear is what is invested in. We've seen what happens when there's a greater interest in what is feared than what is that love or wholeness that connects us. Last week, I had barely gotten the information about the shootings before I came in on Sunday morning. And so after church, it started to set in. And what had happened in Orlando, the full picture started to unfold. And I think that might be true for several people. I mentioned it briefly, and some people said they didn't even know anything had happened until I said that. And some people even said, you didn't mention it. I did briefly because I only had a sort of this much information. I've been cautioned by some people not to speak to the LGBTQ community from the platform at different times because there's a feeling that it might be too political. And so what happened Sunday, and forgive me, when 49 of our brothers and sisters are killed, when 53 others are still struggling for their life, when countless others are now suffering with PTSD, this has moved out of the political into the realm of the personal for me. And I know that's true for many people. And there were many ministers on the listserv who were responding to this. Many of us were called to go to vigils and to speak. And so on the Association for Global New Thought, Reverend Dr. Petra Weldrith, the spiritual director of the Center for Spiritual Living in Dallas, wrote a response. And I just want to share with you her words as we go on. And so again, think of this in light of envisioning a world that works for everyone. Today, as we grieve, feeling the sorrow of loss and the bewilderment of repeated history and the anger of thinking it's finally enough, we ask ourselves questions to which we simply don't know the answers. We can say it's not the guns. We can say it's not the religions. We can say it's not the politics. We can say it's not race. But we cannot say it's not the climate of hate and fear that continues to be built in our country and around the world. Ancient fear of the other, fear of the different, and it is embedded in our culture, religious and political systems in the U.S. and around the world, continuing to be used today to create hate, violence, and separation. And yet, every day, we are coming closer together, more globally connected, seeing that no matter where you live, how you worship, or who you love, the basic needs and wants of every human being are the same. Peace, love, connection, family and work, creative contribution, fair compensation, opportunity, care for the elderly and those less fortunate, and a desire to pray in the manner that most aligns with our inner being. We are not so different after all. Today I stand for love and inclusivity, recognizing the divine spark within each and every human being. I refuse to allow fear and hate to drive me to fear and hate in return. I stand with those in religion and politics and journalism and sports, at home and in the workplace, who refuse to cower from fear or give in to hate. I do not support any extremism in politics, religion, or cultural status quo that overtly or covertly supports, promotes, or allows hatred and violence against another human being. In this I stand, and I shall not be moved. Let us meet hate with inclusivity. and fear with love in our rhetoric, our actions, and our prayers. Today, I pray and affirm that each person who loses their life to hatred and violence, either gay or straight, man or woman, no matter the color of their skin, their religion or practice, is a beacon of light and a harbinger of hope, a power and a force for change in consciousness and a change of heart that will not be denied. Each life lost is a candle added to the light of truth, that we are all one human family, all under one divine authority, living on one beautiful planet that we share together. May love prevail in the hearts and minds of preachers, politicians, and leaders, as well as those individuals who have lost sight of the love that is another name for God. May they be awakened to the consciousness and the consequences of their ideas and the actions their ideas inspire. May the recognition that we, loving, truth-seeking, and spiritual people, will not be swayed from our course of human rights and decency for all, the life, liberty, and pursuit of happiness that our Declaration of Independence demands, and that we claim for each and every human being, no matter the difference. Love is spoken here. Those were Reverend Petra's words. And I think that gives us a clear picture of how we can address some of the things that we've been feeling and how we can envision a world that does work for everyone, taking that idea of love and inclusivity, of what we know is the spark within each and every human being. Ernest Holmes also gives us another picture that we can use to help us move back into an idea of wholeness in our community and in our lives. He says in seminal lectures, and that's a quote that they put into this book of The Essential Ernest Holmes, "We know that the consciousness of the presence, the motivation of love, and the feeling of the desire to give, which partakes of the nature of the original giving, brings back into wholeness that which seemed to be sheared off. We know that everything seeks this wholeness as the river seeks the ocean." So that idea again of love and the desire to give is what we can bring back into this community to help move us back into wholeness. Excuse me. The Global Heart Vision was what solidified for me my desire to move into ministry in this teaching. Because the Global Heart Vision took all of these thoughts and these ideas and this great philosophy, and in my mind, it brought it in and through me and out into the world in the form of action, in the form of how it is I could take this light, this love, this desire to give, and make it form out into the world. My vision for this center has been that we create here a springboard where you fill up with love, where you fill up with that understanding that you are God expressing, and so is every other person in the world. And you use this place as the springboard from which to take that love, to take that desire to give out into the world. And the options for how we can do that are limitless. There's so many different ways that we can do that. Last Sunday, after the service, I saw on Facebook that they were having a vigil at Pioneer Park. So I felt like I needed to go. And Reverend Sandy Scott was also there, along with several other ministers in town, some people from the Islamic community in town, and Rabbi Larry. So there were a lot of us there, in addition to some politicians and I don't know how many other people. And I want to share with you what Reverend Sandy said, and I'm just paraphrasing because I didn't write it down. I'm trying to just remember, but I know she started this way. "I'm old and I'm tired, and yet I'm here to stand with you as an ally and to stand for social justice for all." And she talked about what that stand would look like from her. So yes, I know that some of us in here might feel like they're old and tired, and we're tired of the repetition of some of these things that we've seen. And we might even be tired of trying to hold that vision. But what I also know is that as long as we are alive, we have the light of God within us. And we have a purpose. And that purpose is to shine that light in whatever way we feel called. And so if you don't have a clear idea of what that purpose looks like for you, please take advantage of the fact that there are practitioners here that can work with you to seek that out. We have a practitioner visiting from Albuquerque. Thank you for being here. I'm sure that you're willing to jump into service if need be as well after the service. So he's from the Rio Grande Center. Both of you, hi. So we have people here that can work with you. I'm willing to sit down with you. If it is something that's going to take a little more exploring, then right after the service, make an appointment with somebody. Talk to your best friend. How can you shine your light in this community? How can we bring that love and desire to give out into the community to create the wholeness that we know is the truth of who we are? Is the truth of how Spirit wants to express in and through us. Here at the Center for Spiritual Living, we live and breathe as a dynamic center of love in this community and in the world. And so I know that each and every one of you who are here today are in the right place at the right time. This is the time to come together and figure out how it is we're going to do that. So what is your mental equivalent of a world that works for everyone? What does that look like? It takes a clear thought, and it takes interest in it. And I will admit that for a long time, I've loved that phrase, a world that works for everyone. It felt right to me, but the ability to see it hasn't always been clear. Sometimes I've thought, does that mean that the person who wants to shoot a lot of people and the people who get shot, it has to work for both of them? And then I realized, no. Someone who is filled with love, who understands that they are God expressing, who knows that everyone around them is part of them and is God expressing too, could never shoot those other people. We need to create a world where they feel that love within themselves, everyone, and recognizes they are God expressing. So one of the words that Larry used a few weeks ago to help me to get a vision of this was the word harmony. All of a sudden I saw a bunch of people like different notes on a page. Some are played louder than others, some are softer, some sustain longer, some are sustained really quickly, and they're all in different areas and different ways of expressing. They all sound different, and yet harmony, when all those things come together in harmony, it makes beautiful music. So that created for me a visual that I've started using as my vision of a world that works for everyone, where we can express in all of our different ways in harmony. And then Larry, as I thanked him for that visual, told me about something he'd found online that we're going to share with you, that I think is a great way of seeing how harmony works. Isn't that beautiful? Thank you, Larry. So that gives you a sense of what would happen if we were all playing the same note versus getting to play in harmony with each other. So that's my new visual for a world that works for everyone, is having that harmony. So how do we create then greater harmony within our own lives, between us and the people in our lives, between us here at the center, between us as a center and the greater community? And what kind of gifts do we have that we can take out there that will harmonize with others? What would that look like? I keep saying it, and I'm going to keep saying it because this is my vision, and I am very interested in it. It's time for us to take our light, our givingness, and our love out into the community and restore us to wholeness. And what I know is that all change requires a mental equivalent. Everything that we do requires that mental equivalent. Our clear thinking earns our interest. So what are we interested in? So I wanted to share a few examples of what's already happened within our community. I think it's almost a month or so ago, Kathy and Margie came up to me and said, we have a vision of having a sacred circle here at the center. And they were so interested in it, they were willing to lead it, which is the fabulous thing. So now we have an active, dynamic sacred circle every Thursday here at the center. And I want to also share that in Prosperity Plus, the first classes, what you do is you start getting clear about your vision of who you are, what you're doing in your life. And you start seeing that, and you start figuring out how you can get interested in it. And so in the last Prosperity Plus one, our board president, Mary, had a vision. And she got so interested in it, she set up a GoFundMe page, and she now has a small business of her own. And that small business is creating kimonos that she's calling My Kimono, Chemono, right? I have to spell it. Yeah. My Kimono. These kimonos are to be given to people who are experiencing cancer, breast cancer particularly, that are comfortable. They have pockets inside to hold things. These are her way of giving to that community and to support her expression of light in the world. And not only does she have a small business that's doing this, but her business model is set up to encourage and grow other people to take this out and start their own business and take it all over as far as it wants to spread and needs to go. That's her business model. So it's not all about her getting all the bennies. It's starting somebody off and moving this out so people are making these for people. So they're having a service and they're spreading small business startups. So I had asked her if I could talk about that, and there are flyers if you want more information on what exactly she's doing. They're out in the social hall. And so she sent me this, and I want to share it with you. You asked me earlier this week what I would like you to address about my needs and my kimono business. I have the answer. I would like everyone to share the center and Science of Mind with everyone they meet. Once a day, twice a day, always look for a chance to share who and what we are about. I do this every opportunity I get. I share my thoughts and experiences at CSL, and I share it about my kimono business. The more the congregation grows, the more my business will grow. I will be free to focus more on reaching my personal goals, knowing the center is operating smoothly. She'll have to be here less as the board president. Share the good that my kimono are making in the lives of others, and share the New Thought teaching and CSL with others. Everyone has a story to tell. Invite a friend to Sunday service. Create and facilitate a community group that interests you. My vision is that one day in the social hall, that it will be filled with women and men cutting and sewing my kimonos to give away to anyone in need. I see and feel the love that everyone is giving, being a part of something bigger. I dream large because Science of Mind teaching gives me the tools. I have plans and goals for myself, for others, for our center, our building. Just share. Love, Mary. Thank you, Mary. Yeah. That's how this stuff works. So again, if you want to get clear on your vision, I'd say jump into Prosperity Plus 2. You don't have to have had Prosperity Plus 1. And work on your vision for 10 weeks. See what comes up. So BH, that's what I'm calling before hail. BH, here at the center, we had some ideas of how we could take our light out into the community around that I'd put up on the walls. Some of those have already started. We have the prayer shawl ministry going now. We already had the highway cleanup, but we have people now engaged in that in a different way. But there were other ideas that didn't happen because of the hail and the change in our focus, where our interest went. Some of those were to have a Spanish-speaking sacred living circle and a place where people could exchange that language, those who wanted to learn more English or those who wanted to learn more Spanish. We also had a lot of people interested in serving the animals in this community, working through some of the shelters and making sure that there's less and less kill and more adoptions taking place in this community. So there's all kinds of ideas, all kinds of different ways that we can take our light out there. The last project that the 3 practitioner students had to do for their last day of class, which they have now completed 2 years of practitioner training, go students, their last project, yes. Their last project was to share with us their vision of how they will take this out into the world themselves, or their vision for doing it along with some other people. All 3 of them have great ideas and a lot of interest, so please ask them about their vision. Beth, Teresa, and Martha Ward, they all have some great ideas that are going to be, I'm sure, materializing within the next year. And they'll be getting some of you all on board as well. So how much interest do you pay to creating that world that works for everyone? How much interest do you have in your good? So let's remember then that clear thinking earns our interest, and how much interest we invest will bring about greater returns. It's both that clarity of thought and that interest in it, the kind of interest that generates that creative feeling and emotion that both Holmes and Fox talked about. Doing that creates that mental equivalent that allows us to manifest, allows us to bring all of our good into this world. So let's get interested, and so it is.